I'm Terrell Thomas, sitting down with the co-founder of the Black Fives, Mr. Claude Johnson. How you feeling today, sir?
Good, real good. Actually, I'm the founder. I'm the co-founder with my echo, my shadow, me, myself, and I. All five of us, man. We've been running this, and that's how it is sometimes. But now we have a partnership with Puma that enables us to expand. It's a long-term partnership, and we were already poised to expand anyway. It's just the timing of things, sometimes that keeps you from expanding. It's just the way it is. It's not always money. Sometimes it's the timing or other things that you're working on.
For our audience who hasn't had the opportunity yet to find out and explore exactly what the Black Fives are, everything that the Black Fives stand for, could you give them a little information on that?
Yeah, so I founded an organization called the Black Fives Foundation, and it's a 501c3, and our mission is to research, preserve, showcase, teach, and honor the pre-NBA history of African Americans in basketball. So that goes back to the early 1900s, 1904, on up to 1950, when the NBA signed its first Black players. And that period in between, right from the beginning, when I first started learning about it, I realized not that much is known. And then I started asking, well, why not? And, so that's been a journey of just putting information out there, collecting artifacts and materials to preserve this history, making sure that it doesn't get rewritten, or co-opted or in some other way just forgotten or thrown away.
Why did you feel like that was something that was essential for us to know, whether you're a sports historian, a historian of history, a historian of African American culture and things? Why did you feel like that was something that was so important for us to know of?
Well, it didn't start that way. I was working at the NBA, and when they did their 50th anniversary in 1996, which is the wrong year, but that's beside the point. It's supposed to be 1999, but because it was 1949 when the league was formed. And they wrote a book. They published a book. It was an 800-page book called the NBA Encyclopedia of Basketball. And in that 800 pages, there were just 3 pages devoted to Black teams that played before the NBA, even though Arthur Ashe, the tennis legend, the African-American tennis legend, had written a book called The Hard Road to Glory, which was about the 400-year history of Blacks in sports. It was, and there was a section in his book that listed maybe a dozen or so African-American teams, and it caught my eye. I was like, wait, well, how come Arthur Ashe knows about these, but they're not included? Or how come that? So it began my journey of going to the library. Nobody knew anything about it. The league historians didn't know. Even the Hall of Fame didn't know anything. There were a few academic people who had done some research papers. And so when I went to the library, this was before online. I mean, you could go online, but everything was microfilm. So I would spend like my weekends and vacation days, and you literally have to scroll through the early Black newspapers. And as I was going through those newspapers, I started to realize there's this whole world, parallel world, that's just as big as the Negro Leagues of baseball, but for basketball. And then I thought, well, hold on, like, why doesn't anybody know? And I was living in Brooklyn at the time, and I discovered this team called the Smart Set Athletic Club of Brooklyn, which was an all-Black athletic and social club from 1904. And nobody ever heard of that before. So I thought, since I was in licensing, okay, one day I'm gonna have that on a T-shirt, because I'm smart, I'm athletic, I live in Brooklyn, like, why not? And so as I kept going, I learned all these facts and games and chronology, and I just felt like more people should know about this. Like, how come nobody knows about this? and then it began, morphing into product, like in the throwback era, craze. And then, the reaction that I would get from people was really so amazing that it just kept that momentum going. And at first it was Black Fives Incorporated, because we were, creating t-shirts and jerseys. But then I started to realize, like, I could sell you, Terrell, I could sell you a t-shirt, but I'd rather talk to you about a cause, because a cause it rings better, and like you can do something and make a difference. And so about 2013, I switched it all up, donated all of our assets that the company had to this new nonprofit that I had set up, including all the trademarks, just everything, the whole collection of artifacts, and then then everything started up, and then I started to realize, the real important part of this, aside from preserving and everything, is the teaching part, like the part that I think we as an organization could do the most about, is the teaching. So it's not like it's been a journey. Like you can't make this up like from a long time ago and say, okay, this is the vision. Sometimes you have to just go, and then like you said, let the creator guide you. I'm always open to just divine guidance. Like one has to be, because otherwise you can't get there from here.
Extremely well said. How do you go about gathering and collecting the artifacts and things that you've collected over the past few years?
Well, at first, because we started this, this organization and this effort around 1996, but more formally like 2002. And back then, you could go on eBay and just find stuff based on search terms that other people just didn't value and didn't care about as much, because they just didn't know, where this fit in, right? And I started making a specific point of collecting materials that had to do with Black basketball, whether that was a church team, a club team, a military team, women's teams, college, anything that just looked beautiful, because it depicted our people in vintage basketball situations, uniforms, whatever. And then I eventually became friendly with several descendants along the way, and then they started saying, okay, well, we want you to have our collection, or my father's scrapbook, or something else, other things like that, because at a certain point they realized we would be, we would treat it with white gloves and put it in its proper conservation and storage to keep it and preserve it, and make sure that other people could see it, because it's no good if it's just in the basement of some institution, and it's never going to see the light of day. So that's how that happened over the years. And, so eBay is one area, but just also other places and individual collectors and different people, families. Now they have a place to go where, where we can store and scan and preserve and showcase that, and it's been, we have about almost 1,000 items now in our archive, which is actually in Atlanta, outside Atlanta. Yeah.
So talk to me about this new partnership in which you mentioned a moment ago that you have Puma Hoops, Puma and Black Fives. How did this partnership all come together?
Well, it's been a while in the making. We've been trying to talk to Puma for several years, and just kind of get them to understand, like, what are we, what is this? And so then it just by, again, like divine intervention, they started getting into re-entering basketball, because really a couple of years ago they were out of basketball, and then they started creating performance product, and they got with Rock Nation, and then Rock Nation started signing first rounders, and those first rounders would come over, like DeAndre Ayton, Kyle Kuzma, and others, that they have. So they now have like a legitimate team of ambassadors, Marcus Smart, Boogie Cousins, they mean something. They just signed LaMelo Ball, so there's like a lot of goodness coming out of that, and it's genuine. It's not just signing people, just for the name and just for the sake of it, to buy some kind of authenticity, because Puma is also known for how much they are down with actual causes like prison reform and gender equality and voting rights and things like that. So finally, like maybe 2 years ago, we started to get more serious and talking about, okay, what could this really be? And then we moved into, okay, let's partner up. And we have our organization, back when I was learning about the smart set, since I was in licensing, what we started to do was trademark the names and logos of these teams, also as a way of protecting their usage, so that they could be concentrated and focused for exactly this kind of an opportunity where we could go out and tell the stories in a way that isn't diluted, or that everybody else is telling their version of a story. Because really, history, it doesn't change. It's only what we do with it that changes. So, I always felt like, let's just hurry up and get this story told, because otherwise, like, everybody else is going to tell their version of the story. And today's world, like, you'll just believe whatever version you hear, because that's what you heard first, So that's how that came about, and so we finally signed and finalized this in October.
Okay.
Even though the product had been planned, since well before that, because it takes like 18 months of a lead time to get product into the market. So the launch of the product was just this week. Actually, it was on the 12th.
The product is phenomenal,
Hey.
I must say. the product is definitely phenomenal. What all do you envision with the partnership with Puma now? Of course, expansion and more people being able to actually learn the history of the Black Fives. But what else do you envision with this new partnership with Puma?
Well, I've always wanted to have to do something with these artifacts, right? So this past summer, when we all got an awakening, the entire world was awakened. And I still get goosebumps when I think about that 50,000 people in New Zealand were marching and chanting Black Lives Matter, and in Tokyo and in Paris and in Vienna. And, that just means something beyond just what it is on the surface. It's an awakening of consciousness. But it was also this summer and through COVID that we start to realize that virtual is the new reality, right? And so I see how school teachers are using Google Classroom to go out and pluck information or things off the web and bring them into their classrooms, and then saying, okay, here's this lesson, read this or do this or write an essay about this topic. But when I combine those two together, one of the things that everybody called for this summer, of course, was let's pledge, first acknowledge, and then disavow, and then pledge to dismantle white supremacy and systemic racism. And what I decided, the part of that I could be accountable for, that our organization could be accountable for, was the education part, which was Black history reform or Black history education reform. The history doesn't change, but after this summer, I realized that what we do with it has to change, right? So it used to be, hey, look at these pioneers. Aren't they great? They overcame these obstacles. They paved the way. Let's give them a round of applause. And that after this summer didn't feel like it was enough. We had to now go back and ask, well, why even is there a Black Fives Foundation? Why even was there a segregated period of Black basketball? And so I felt like, well, let's use this history to start those conversations, because from where I can see, we now, a lot more people have permission to go into a white boardroom and talk about white supremacy, systemic racism, race, Black people, white people, history, and it's welcomed. And not only is it welcomed, it's encouraged, because we have to get at that. And so we said, I want there to be Black history taught from K through 12 and up, like mandatory. Now I can't control that, but what I can do is use our artifacts and put them virtually, and then create educational tasks or learning modules around them, and then make it so that a teacher can upload those, into Google Classroom and give them as assignments to their students. And so what Puma did
That's hard.
is they agreed to be presenting sponsors of our virtual museum, which we're going to call a virtual vault. So it'll be an online museum, and we're going to have educational curriculum and topics around that. And the beauty of that for us is that now we can measure what we're doing. Because before, we just had a website, a lot of information, a lot of photos. It's really cool, but we can't measure that. You can't measure whether you do it making a difference just by how many likes you get. And so now we can say, okay, how many classrooms did it go into? How many kids did something with it? How many teachers? How many people saw it? Yes, but now we can follow up. And it's in the development. Like, this isn't there yet, okay, but it'll be called the Black Fives Virtual Vault. And it's dope because they're going to be the presenting sponsors, but we likely have other sponsors as well that we're talking to already. That's the difference, is that what can we do with this history? That's all, and so we can't be accountable for everything that I listed, in terms of all those topics, but we can start those conversations, have those conversations. Here's an example. Say if we know that we have a ticket stub from the New York Renaissance, all Black, fully professional, Black-owned basketball team that was organized in 1923. Okay. And so we know for a particular season that they played 150 games and they went on this road trip and they won 88 straight games in 1933. So now we can say, okay, here's their schedule. Pretend you're the road manager. Now look at this green book and tell us where that team is going to stay and why. Because they're going all throughout Indiana, Wisconsin, wherever. And so that creates a discussion about segregation and facilities and Jim Crow, but also in a way, in a basketball context, and in a way that's interesting. And then it also brings up the topic, well, wait, how did an all-Black team get invited to play in an all-white town in Wisconsin or wherever, in the middle of the Great Depression, in the middle of Jim Crow, win, leave, and get invited back. Like somehow that had to happen in a collaboration, a handshake, a deal. And as it turns out, these teams, when they went out to barnstorm, especially the Wrens, they were almost like a mobile economic stimulus, because they would go to a town like Oshkosh, and the bars, the restaurants, the hotels, the merchants, people would come from miles around because there's nothing else to do. You didn't have like TV, movies, but you could go to watch this game. And then there were people wagering on the game. And so, that's why it was a win-win for everyone. And I am fascinated by that. Like, how come that part didn't get, how come that part didn't get into the news, So there were a lot of innovations and a lot of great developments and things that happened during that time that are worthy of talking about today, because it was all about empowerment. The league now, is an amazing platform for social causes, for making a difference. Players are not just going up there anymore and saying, wearing a t-shirt and then that's it. Like, like that's like, these brothers are out there and sisters are out there, like changing the political landscape, changing the texture and the tone and the substance of what's going into schools, into films, and all kinds of initiatives. And that's how it was back then. Like, we were all we had, and so we're not all we have anymore, but we definitely have to gather up all of our resources and like really listen carefully, and like do the right thing every time, and not let it be what they sometimes call the okey doke of like, well, yeah, well, and then like, because again, like, it's really easy to get distracted and misled, and I can see it very clearly sometimes through history. It's like, so I'm always listening, like, what are you saying really, to whoever's on TV, and what are you not saying, because that's just as important.
Very well said. Very well said. It's been an honor, as always, to sit and chat with you. I learn something every time I talk with you, and that's great from a basketball perspective, and even just from the perspective of life. I think you're a great man. I think your mission is phenomenal. I'm hoping that, along with the new partnership with Puma, that more people do become aware of the Black Fives, that they do become aware of just how great it was, and how great the history of it is, so that they can inquire and maybe add something. Somebody may watch this interview and find out that their great-great-granddad still has something in the attic that can be
Definitely
contributed to the Black Five movement, and the vault that'll become the virtual vault that'll be coming very soon. Could you please let our audience know how they can check you out via social media, and how they could contact you if they were to find out that, hey, grandma, great-grandma, great-granddad has some type of artifacts that could be beneficial to the Black Fives?
Definitely, yeah. So you can always go to our website, blackfives.org. On Instagram, Twitter, and everywhere, we're just / at Black Fives. You can give to our charity by going to give.blackfives.org. We actually have a new online fan shop. We have a lot of cool products on there, including this Puma gear, and it's at shop.blackfives.org. So, you can search up Claude Johnson, that's me, and Black Fives, or, find out more about me on LinkedIn, or, any things that we're doing. I just want to go back one quick second before you sign off, Terrell, because, with Puma, one of the things that we're asking them to do is an audit of their company, not just how many Black designers do they have or how many Black employees, but who are the vendors that they buy from? Because if you buy from a company, whether that's paper towels, millions and millions and millions of pounds of paper towels a year, or whether that's bigger items, landscaping, whatever it is, who do those companies hire? What do they look like? How many executives that are Black or women or brown are in that? You know, what about the drivers? What about, you know, like you got to go down to that level, because at that level, that's where like regular folks work. Like regular folks aren't designers at Puma or executives in the boardroom. And that's great to put Black executives and Black designers and whoever else. But actual jobs is down here, you know, where Joe Madison said, like, where the goats can get it. Right? So like, that's the only way. And like, it's okay to, wherever you start, if you have 0 Black employees and 0 Black vendors, et cetera, then that's a place to start. Then just say, okay, this is where we start, but we'd like to get here. And then we'd like to get here the following year. We're going to make progress and keep going. And all companies can do that. So yes, give $100 million to, you know, these causes, but also go in and look at and tell people this is what we're doing and this is what we're about. And any corporation can do that. And I think that's really important. And so for us, so we have, you know, Black design, this partnership with Puma, you know, we asked for a Black animator, Black TikTok influencer, Black photographer, Black models, you know, so on and on. Like you have to ask, and folks are not objecting, and it just turns out that the output of what they're doing is great. It's fantastic. So we might actually do a Zoom call with all of those faces, just because.
That'd be
like,
hard.
you know what I'm saying? Like this, let's go. You know, I mean, it's just one small example, but why not?
No, I think that's a hell of an example, and I'm glad you said that, because that's something I wasn't aware of myself. I think that is dope. What you said is phenomenal. It is, where does the basic line be drawn? Where you say, what are the drivers doing? What are the landscape? It is cool to have people in these boardrooms, but we don't see those people on an everyday basis. So that was very well said. Thank you for sharing that, because I had no clue.
Yeah, no, we all have the opportunity to do that. Whether it's in the music industry, you're going to sign with this label. You now have an opportunity to ask them some questions. You're going to write a book. You're going to be with this publisher, or you're going to be with this footwear company. It's not just about how many Black employees you have. That's a start, but it's also, where do you spend your money? That's the more powerful question to ask right now these days, you know.
Well said, sir. Well said. We will sit back down with you soon. Hopefully too, you know, find out more about the people, the creatives, and what you work with to get everything off the ground. Once again, man, thank you for everything you do. Thank you for everything you've done for me personally, and the things in which you're teaching our people. I think it's much needed. It's a great resource to have. I'm proud to call you a friend. Be looking forward to seeing what you do in the future, not only with Puma, but just what you do in the future. We'll be looking forward to seeing what you do in the future as well.
Thank you very much, sir. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, man. We'll be in touch.
All right. Take care.
Peace.